guys, it's Julian. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make Disco House like channel tray. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And let's dive in. Alright, here's the project. So we're at 120 BPM, a little bit slower, but kind of gives it that more organic kind of disco feel. And the first sound that we have here is just the kick, which sounds like this. So this kick, you can see, it's pretty much dry, but the processing that we're doing here is I've pitched it, and I've also shortened it. So this is a really powerful way of kind of making the kicks a little bit tighter and a little bit shorter. It's just using the amplitude envelope here. I do this a lot with hi-hats and stuff you guys probably see on this channel, but it works really well if you have a kick like this that is like really big and fat. But if we turn the sustain up, you know, it's just a little bit too long. Shortening it, you can hear it just fits a lot better with the bass line this way. So that's the kick, and then underneath that we have the bass line. So yeah, this is a pretty disco-influenced bass line. What's happening here is it's just this really repetitive pattern. It's kind of like, you know, that very like Daft Punk-esque sort of disco where, you know, it's just that like half note, literally just that same thing over and over. Which if you look, it's actually just two notes, because you can see we have G and F down here, and then G and F an octave up. So pretty simple there. And then at the end it just goes down that whole step there to make it, so the chord there is essentially F major. So we have like a G minor chord, and then an F major chord, basically. But it's just all about creating that really repetitive like the thing that a lot of people don't realize with this kind of music is that the thing that's making you dance is actually the bass line. Like, it's not really the percussion. You would think it's like, oh, because the percussion, you know, is so bouncy and stuff. But notice how you want to like kind of bob your head a lot more when we just play that kick and bass line together than when we play the percussion. So that's something to keep in mind, that like the bass line groove is really, really important, even if it may not seem like the most like right up front thing, because you hear the bass line a lot more in the sub frequencies. You know, that's really like the main groove, is the kick and bass line going together. And for the sound here, it's made with this operator patch. Now, we're not actually doing any FM. You can see it's also monophonic. We have the voices set to 1. So what this is it's a sine wave and then a saw wave and a little bit of a square wave as well. You can see we've shortened the envelopes on these to make it a bit pluckier. And then those are all going into this low pass here, which also has an envelope on it. So here's without that. And then with it. And that's how we get that kind of like, you know, it's somewhere in between like a 303 and a live bass. And that's essentially the type of bass that you want. And then that's just going through a bit of drum bus. I have this EQ here actually boosting the lows. And it's also being sidechained to the kick just a little bit. Kind of make that fit into the groove a little better. And yeah, and then on the group of those, we just have a little bit of saturation. Here's without it. And then with it. So you can hear it's not a whole lot. It just gives that extra little glue between these two elements and really makes them kind of fit together better. And a good trick with this is turning that bass frequency down. I'm pretty sure I talked about this in a video the other day, where basically like if you take the bass frequency and just turn it down, you can make this actually get like a lot less crunchy, where we can get more saturation out of it and it's going to be fatter, but it's not going to have that like effect. Like if I turn it in the opposite direction, you can actually hear it. Like this is what we're trying to avoid. And yeah, so that is the low end bus. The next thing that we have here is this pad. So this is essentially playing the chord progression that I just described the bass line was doing, where you can see we have a G minor chord, and then right in that last bar there, when it goes down on the bass line, it just goes down to an F major chord. And then what these are is these are ninth chords. So we're also adding, in the case of G minor, we're adding a minor seventh, and we're adding a ninth. And then for the F major, we're adding a major seventh, and then a ninth there. And it just kind of makes things a bit more like kind of jazzy and like deep house influence. You know, versus like if we just go to like a straight major and minor chord. You know, it's a lot less vibey. And for the sound with this one, it's made with analog. Now, this is probably the most complicated analog patch I've shown you guys on this channel before. It's a saw wave and a square wave, which are detuned a little bit, going with a little bit of white noise as well. You can see on the square wave, we have, the pulse width, and I have an LFO on that. And then you can see already right off the bat, so we have oscillator 1 just going entirely into the first filter, and then the noise oscillator is going entirely into filter 2. And we're using this one routing, I'm pretty sure it's this one. And then what's happening here is we have a low pass filter up top and a formant filter down here. So basically, we're getting like essentially that from the low pass. You can hear when I turn it off and then when I turn it back on. And then we're getting this from the formant. Here's without it. And then with it. So they both come together to create the sound. And this is just a really great way to work with saw waves and square waves and noise and all that. Because it's like, you know, when you make the same saw wave pad over and over and over, after a certain point, it's kind of like we get it, dude. Like, you know, what's next? So that's essentially what this is doing. This is like a nice way of creating a pad that's going to be just a bit more exciting than just like a saw wave with a low pass filter on it, you know. And so also for modulation, we have an LFO on filter 1 on the filter frequency, and we have an LFO actually on the filter frequency, just a little bit of oscillator 2, and we also have key tracking on oscillator 2. And then the amp envelopes look like this. So yeah, you can see with this first one, it's a bit longer. I'll actually take this one and make it like that. And those are the LFOs. Then we just have a bit of vibrato and some unison, a bit of chorus, and some reverb, which are giving it space. And then finally, this is just being sidechained to the kick. And that's really it for the pad. You know, it's just a nice, strong pad coming out of the synth. It doesn't need too much processing. And yeah, then we have this vintage string, which sounds like this. So this just plays in that last bar. Like every 4 bars, you just get this, almost like a turnaround. And all it is it's just playing with that F major chord that's playing there. You can see we have an F major 7, which is the same as that F major 9, just missing that 9th. So we have that F major 7. And then here, it actually plays an A minor 7. But what it's doing is you can see it's just using some of those notes that are in the F major 7 chord, and then we just add that minor 7th on top. But this just kind of adds like some nice musical texture. You know, it's something that's a little bit less synthy, a bit more like kind of organic. And just having that there at the end of every 4 bars just adds something really nice that you wouldn't get if you just had the synth layers. And so this is just this sample here inside of a simpler, you know, this is really all about the texture. Like, it's all about just getting a nice sound like this that already has like that really nice kind of texture to it, and you're not really having to do too much to it. But for effects on here, we do have just a bit of reverb, some drum bus which fattens it up and makes it a bit more like analog and warm sounding. We have it being sidechained to the kick, and then finally, I just have a high-pass filter. And yeah, that's it for that vintage string, and then we move on to the percussion. So right off the bat, we have this shaker, ready together with this hi-hat, which you can hear the hi-hat just adds a little bit more of like a to it, kind of like some punch, but the shaker's really the main sound. You know, just something to keep in mind here is really just the type of sound this is. You know, it's more organic. It's not going to be like a big 909 hi-hat or anything. It's something live sounding and something very real. And then that hi-hat just backs that up. And then we have the bongos. You know, just like a simple groove with those. The main thing is just finding two bongo samples that are going to fit together really nicely. Then we have this tambourine loop. So like a live tambourine here. And that's just being sidechained a little to the kick. And then we have this plonk. So just like a little plonk. So that's just that little sound there. And then I have it going through some reverb. And after the reverb, we're distorting it. So this is kind of a nice technique, you know. A lot of times people think like you would distort it and then do the reverb. But when you distort it after the reverb, you just get a very different texture that you can't get when you're using just the reverb with the distortion going into it. Because essentially, the distortion is kind of like crunching the reverb and the sound together. And yeah, if I put this before it, you'll hear what I'm talking about. See, it's not the same as that. And this just hits like on every two, so we get like... Yeah, just these little background elements like this in the percussion are gonna add a lot, and kind of like, this is the stuff that I think people overlook a lot. You know, obviously it's easy to think to do like this. But then the real magic comes when you add in all that other stuff too. So yeah, and on the groove of that percussion, we just have a little bit of drum bus, just tying it together. Here's without it. And then with it. So you can hear it makes all the percussion just a lot juicier, a lot more full sounding. You know, it kind of fits into the track a lot better. And it gives it all some nice, more like warm texture too. And yeah, then we have the clap, which is 3 layers. So you can see we have this main ring clap right down the middle. And then we have one in the right ear. And one in the left ear. And then you put that all together. And you get a very full sounding clap. So that's something that I want you guys to try. Like when you're making the claps in this style of house, don't just use the one clap that's just dunk, dunk. Try to make it more of like a hand clap, like multiple people clapping at once. And this is how you do that. You know, like I said, it's just having these all 3 in very different places. You also notice that they hit at slightly different times. We get the left one a little bit before, the one down the center right on the beat, and then the right one is a little bit after. So it's just kind of like pushing these off center a little bit and making them feel like kind of their own thing a bit more. Rather than just having them all right on the same count exactly, it wouldn't feel as live. And for effects on there, we just have a short reverb. Kind of gives it some more space, makes it feel more live. And then we have the drum bus, which is just fattening these up and making them feel a bit more punchy. And yeah, that is it for the claps. Then we have this E-piano. So all this is playing is it's playing that G minor 9 chord, the same one that was being played by the pad and all that. And then what's happening is, you can see we're just using the root note and the 5th in some places here to kind of add these little extra like percussive. So it's not just, but so it's got something a little bit more live to it. You know, so it feels like it's really being played in. Because if this feels too fake, it's not going to work. It needs to feel like it's like a real live instrument being played in. And for the sound, I'm just using this EP faceplant here. We've got it going through some short reverb, a drum bus, which really goes a long way for fattening this up and making this feel, you know, just more raw and live and textured. And then finally, we just have a high-pass filter, because you actually want this to be a bit kind of like deeper. You know, like a little bit more in the background, so that high-pass filter kind of makes it sound a bit more like a sample, you know, it kind of washes it out a little bit. And yeah, that is it for the E-piano. also going to be it for this video, guys. So, I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the support. Everybody who picks up these sample packs really helps keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every single day. You know, I don't make a whole lot just with YouTube, but with the sample packs and stuff, I'm able to keep going and keep bringing you guys new stuff. Plus, you get a great resource to work with and build your own productions. Link to that is at the top of the description. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.